Hi! Welcome back to Rogers Reads. Today we're going to be doing our December wrap-up, which since I've actually started tracking my reading, I think is the best reading month I've ever had. I read 11 books, and the average scores for these books, the star rating was 4.23 on average. I read 4 5-star books, 1 4.5-star book, 4 4-star books, and 2 3-star books. I think we can all agree that that's a really nice spread of ratings. I read a large proportion of 4 and above star books. Only 2 of 11 were just okay for me. And so we'll just jump right in. The first book that I read, it's kind of a carryover from November. I started it in November and finished it now, is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, which I don't think people need much introduction to. It's a kind of crossover young adult, new adult-ish fantasy story where we have this scholar who works in a library named Laszlo Strange, who has dreams of this ancient civilization, who he's grown up on stories of how magical this place is. But at some point in the past, something happened, and the name of that magical place was erased from everybody's memories, and he dreams of being able to go and find out what happened to that magical city. And things kind of take off from there. And I just loved everything about the story. I usually am not a huge fan of purple prose, and Laini Taylor especially does have a very loquacious and beautiful style of describing things, but I found myself really drawn into the story by the world building and the characters. It was a unique world, a unique magic system that I have never seen before, and these characters I really came to love. And avoiding any kind of spoilers, I was heartbroken at the end of this book and was shocked that it went there. I was like, oh, I thought this was supposed to be YA. Dang, okay, Laini. And so that was the first read of the month, and I gave that 5 stars. The second read of the month, I immediately picked up the sequel, Muse of Nightmares, which I obviously can't say too much about without spoiling Strange the Dreamer. And while I did still love the book, the world building took a turn that I wasn't totally expected. We got some more information on how the magic came to be in this world and that kind of stuff that I thought was interesting, but was not totally what I was expecting. And so while I still did really enjoy the story, it wasn't quite as good for me as Strange the Dreamer. And so that book I gave 4.5 stars. The next book I picked up was a novella in the Skyward series. I had read Skyward and Starsight in November, and I thoroughly enjoyed those. It was my first time dipping into Brandon Sanderson's non-adult works, and I don't usually read sci-fi, but with the adorable animal companion and all of that kind of stuff, I really fell in love with these books, and so I wanted to read the 2 novellas before the 3rd installment in the series Cytonic dropped. And so I read both Sunreach and ReDawn and enjoyed my time with both of them. Usually novellas are kind of like these little side quests that don't really seem to feed back into the main story very much, but both Sunreach and ReDawn really expanded on the world and expanded on events that were happening elsewhere while our main protagonist, Spencer, was doing other things. And I really enjoyed them, and I think that they were critical when going into Cytonic. So if you're somebody who has read Skyward and Starsight and are wondering whether or not these novellas are like important or necessary, I would argue that you definitely want to read these novellas before moving on to Cytonic. And both of these books I gave 4 stars. The next book I read, it was just a brief little aside, and it was Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the illustrated edition. I got it for free on Kindle Unlimited. And it was actually really fun to go through because when you went through on the Kindle app on your phone, a lot of the animations were actually fully animated and moved in the pictures, and that just kind of added to the reading experience. But it really is not an impactful story per se. It's more an encyclopedia of beasts in the magical wizarding world and just a little bit of information about them. It was just something fun that I saw on Kindle Unlimited and decided to pick up. Of course, since it's not really a story, I only gave it, I think, 3 stars because it was okay, it was fun, and so it's hard to give a real rating to. The next book I picked up was The Hobbit. Again, I found this on Kindle Unlimited, and I haven't read The Hobbit in many years and had recently rewatched the movies in the 4K version, and so I just really wanted to go back and refresh myself on what the story was. If you don't know, The Hobbit is a classic fantasy tale originally written for children that was then expanded later on into the full Lord of the Rings universe. And it's the story of our Hobbit, Bilbo, as he goes off with a party of dwarves ready to reclaim their homeland from a dragon. There's a wizard, there's shenanigans. It's just a magical, whimsical, wonderful time. And The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit still remains one of my favorite series to this day. And so that was a reread for me, but again, on reread, it was still 5 stars. The next book I read was probably the toughest book for me to get through. I read Crossroads of Twilight by Robert Jordan, book 10 in the Wheel of Time, the last book in the infamous slog, and boy, let me tell you, was it a slog to get through this book. It was also my first time picking up an audiobook, but I think without the audiobook, I would never have finished this book. I might have DNF'd it and never continued in the series at all. The narration by Kate Redding and Michael Kramer was phenomenal, and that was probably the only thing that pushed me through this book, and the ability to speed it up to 1.2 times speed, because good Lord, nothing happened. I kept waiting. I was like, okay, well, Winter's Heart ended and it was really exciting. That ending was awesome. I thought that we would be dealing with what happened because no, it ended up going back in time and it was kind of like a concurrent event, and I despise that. When you have this really amazing thing that happens, you want to continue from that point. You don't want to go back and listen to people's thoughts and stuff. It was boring. And I kept waiting. I was like, okay, we're gonna get to something good. Nope, we never got there. I am happy to say that I am now past the slog. And I've heard that Knife of Dreams really picks up, and that the last 3 books that were written by Brandon Sanderson really saved the series for a lot of people. And so I'm hoping that also happens for me. But as it stands right now, Crossroads of Twilight was about a 3-star. If I'm more honest, it's probably more like a 2.5, 2.75 star. But I did round that up to 3 stars on Goodreads. It was just, wow. The definition of a slog. The next book I picked up was book 1 in the Winter Night trilogy, The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This really took me by surprise. I've heard a lot of people like Thoughts on Tomes and some other creators who love the Winter Night trilogy, who will shout from the rooftops that everybody should read this series, that it's amazing. And I kept putting it off like, whatever. It's fine, I'll get to it eventually. But boy, do I wish that I'd got to this sooner. Not only was it perfect for the winter season and had all of those wintry vibes that you could ever want, it was really unique and innovative, pulling from Russian mythology with all of these cool creatures and how they interwove with regular life with the people, and the effects that Christianity had on that native mythology. It was just really fascinating to see some of those parallels to real world while keeping the very storytell nature of this book. I don't want to say too much because I think going into it kind of blind like I did really allows you to sink into the magic that was this story. It was 5 stars, no doubt. Up next, I read Cytonic, book 3 in the Skyward series. So obviously, since it's book 3 in a series, I can't say too much about it, but it continues the adventures of Spensa from the Skyward books and expands the universe more. It gives you some more information about some of the bad guys that were introduced earlier on in the series. You get a little bit more lore and world building, and I just love this world. I think it's so much fun. And if you haven't picked up Skyward because you're like me and you're like, well, YA sci-fi, blah, I really think that you should pick it up. And for me, it was 5 stars. I had so much fun. Then the last 2 books that I read, they were both on audio because I've heard how amazing the audiobooks are, were Stormfront and Full Moon by Jim Butcher, books 1 and 2 in the Dresden Files. And I don't know what took me so long to pick these books up. I've always loved the books by Laurel K. Hamilton, the Mary Gentry series, as well as the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series. And so that kind of urban fantasy detective type story I've loved since I was in junior high. And this is very much more of the same of that. So I'm surprised it took me so long. So that being said, they are very much kind of like a Buffy-esque monster of the week kind of just fun thing where you have this openly practicing wizard in Chicago who's kind of this almost like private investigator who corresponds with the police on supernatural crimes. And it is so much fun. And the reason that I particularly drew those Buffy parallels is because the narrator is James Marsters, who played Spike in the Buffy series. So I just had to make that connection because I love me some Buffy. And they were both 4 stars. They were nothing amazing or completely mind-blowing. I hear that the series grows and gets more complex as time goes on, so I'm really excited for that. So that is all that I read in December. How about you? What books did you guys pick up? Hopefully you had a great reading month, you stayed safe, you saw family and had some fun and had a nice break from work. I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Give this video a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more bookish stuff from me. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!